Well, Penn State fans, if you have grown weary of the white-collar financial crimes resort prison of 10-2 and a New Year's Six Bowl, I've got some great and probably also terrible news. We got another parole hearing coming up on Saturday. So foolishly get your hopes up, grab your pencil and your paper. It's the obligatory PSU pregame show. All right, off we go.
Mike's parole hearing was last week. I hear it went well, Mike.
Oh yeah, it was great.
Six more weeks.
6 more weeks, I'm finished. That's
Awesome. I love it. Welcome, everybody. It's Michigan Week. It's the obligatory PSU pregame show. I'm your fake host, Chris Buchignani. I got Mike The Mailman. I got Kevin Horne. And once again, remotely, we've got Brandon Noble, who I can see on the monitor is hustling back to get on screen. Hey, Brandon.
Hi, Brandon.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry, in the middle of the workday.
All right. No, we appreciate you being here with us, and we appreciate you being here with us on the YouTube channel for the Bloggy. Thanks very much to the good folks at Anti-Fragile Brewing Company. Check them out at 324 East Calder Way here in State College or at antifragilebrew.com. Making some of the best beer, not only in the Nittany Valley, but the whole Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We're enjoying it again. And we're going to need that booze, Kevin.
Yes.
And brief moments of enjoyment because it's Michigan Week. Go.
Right, especially the Czech Pale Lager and the Munich Helles. Money is the 6 cents and the Rational Flanor, which I'm contractually obligated to say are delicious, even though Anti-Fragile is known for its IPAs and hazy IPAs, which I am again contractually obligated to say are on par with Fiden's and Treehouse of the world. Okay. But they are very good, and we will be needing a lot of them on Saturday, I suspect, before that noon kickoff, Michael.
Oh, no problem this week. Again, no beer needed.
Now, you understand what happened the last time you told our loyal viewing audience that there was, quote, no problem, right?
Yeah. But
we went 1 for 16 on third down, and the one was a penalty.
Well, but I think everyone in Happy Valley has forgotten that Ohio State game already. It just feels like they're ready for Michigan now. I think, hopefully, the team is.
I think it's 50-50. I think they either have forgotten it, and you know what? All they needed was one great performance against Maryland, and they were back on the bandwagon. Or Penn State's secret weapon may be that we all gave up so much hope after the Ohio State game. We're so scarred by it that we're now playing with house money. It's like you basically feel like you have nothing to lose, so all the tension is gone. Maybe that's the same for the team. So, Brandon, I'm going to kick it over to you. Based on what we saw in College Park last week, dominating win for Penn State, you feeling any differently heading into this game just based on what we've seen from Michigan so far and then what we saw most recently from the Nittany Lions?
I don't know that I feel any different, but I do feel like the weight was lifted a little bit off of the team. I think that you could see it. They lost to Ohio State, right? It was kind of this pinnacle program moment. Then they kind of lay an egg. They did lay an egg against Indiana. And then they showed up against Maryland and did what a great or a good football team should do against a not great football team, right? Look, Maryland's not a great football program. They win their first 5 games because they don't play anybody. And then when they get to the thick of it, they lose the rest, right? So, again, not a great benchmark. But at the same time, Penn State went out and played really well. And I think that gives them some momentum and some confidence going into this game. And I do think a little bit of, and I'm not a moral victory guy. You guys know that. I think the loss to Ohio State, taking them kind of out of that top 2 or 3 spot, takes a little bit of the weight off, takes a little bit of the pressure off of some of these younger guys, maybe even Aller, and allows them to go out and play well this week. Now, I don't know what that means, but I feel better going into this game on Saturday after the Maryland game than I did before it, right? If they'd have played the same way against Maryland that they played against Indiana, I would tell you all to come watch us play at Kottmeyer Stadium on Friday night. I'll buy you breakfast on Saturday. We'll hang out and we'll have some beers and have a good time. But I'm jealous that I can't be in Happy Valley this weekend because I think it's going to be a great atmosphere, and I think it can be a very good football game. I don't know if we can win it, but I think it can be a really good game.
Here's 2 reasons for excitement, and they're kind of oddball ones.
Please.
One is the tiebreaker's back in play.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
after this
Very good
last
point.
weekend, so of course the main tiebreaker is head-to-head, which would require Penn State to beat Michigan, Michigan to beat Ohio State. But the second thing that they look at to see who goes to the Big Ten championship from the East side is opponents' records in the other division, which is kind of crazy. But Penn State's we're really big Iowa fans. We're really big Illinois fans. And
imagine going into the season, we thought we were totally screwed on that because we had Northwestern on the schedule.
Right. And we're big Northwestern fans. I mean,
you're right.
Here's the
winning.
sick part. Whether Penn State goes to the college football playoffs could come down to Indiana, Purdue the last weekend of the season after Michigan beats Ohio State, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Because you don't the way it's shaping up with Florida State almost certainly going undefeated. It's not looking like an 11-1 Big Ten team will get in again. It's going to have to be 12-1 at worst. So, and the second thing is Michigan's schedule is just dreadful, right? So we can have some sort of blinders on and have some sort of fairy tale theory about how the fact Michigan has played no one, and I mean no one. I mean their schedule is historically monumentally terrible. I feel bad for those fans. They have beat up on every team, but it's just they're out of conference was UNLV, East Carolina, and Bowling Green. East Carolina is having one of the worst seasons in college football history. Bowling Green is awful. Yep. And UNLV is actually putting a respectable season together. But it's UNLV. And then from there, it was Rutgers, Nebraska. I mean, they have played the worst of the worst. And so I think the hope is maybe they're frauds. Maybe once they go up against a defense that has a pulse, this fairy tale is going to be over for them. And when they don't have the signals, that might help too.
We're gonna get to that. I agree with you that it can be overstated that they've played quote unquote nobody, but I do think there's something, Mike, to being this late into the season. I mean, we're talking about week 10 now, and you haven't really been challenged in any way. And even though spoiler alert, I am not feeling super optimistic about this game. I already promised you good folks a couple of weeks ago I was not going to get sucked back in until I saw James win a big game. I do think this is by far the stiffest test. This is a legit defense. It's going to be an intimidating environment inside Beaver Stadium. I think the fans are back on board enough that whether they're believing or they think we're playing with house money and they don't care, either way, I think Michigan is going to be tested, and we haven't seen how they respond to that all season.
And just to see the quarterback Allard last week was in such a zone. The tackling was crisp. I mean, the whole game was just unbelievable. So you cannot have enough optimism going into this week, I think, as a player and a fan.
Right. It's helpful. Penn State's coming off of the first complete game of the year.
Definitely.
So, Brandon, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit and take you back to your playing days. So you talked about what the team had to do coming off a loss to Ohio State. Well, you experienced that your senior year. You guys, you played on I'm going to call it a national title team, hat tip to the New York Times in 1994. And then I had a little bit of a disappointing down year the following year in 95. So you got that hangover out of your system. And that was a really good football team Penn State had in the 1996 season. I think probably not appreciated as much just because of its proximity to 94. That was another of our really great teams. And, you start season off strong, and then you take a beating from Ohio State. If you can think back, what goes on in the locker room? Because that team held it together, had an 11-2 season, won the Fiesta Bowl. What's that recovery process like when you have high hopes and you take that first punch in the mouth?
Well, I think, it's sometimes when you get beat that bad, it's almost easier. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but sometimes you're just like, you know what? They got us, right? And that's exactly, we went out to the Horseshoe. I think it was number 4 playing number 5 or something along those lines. And we got boat raced. In fact, Joe pulled the starters, I think, in the third quarter, not because we were winning, but because we were losing so bad. And so, and that was a really good team we were playing against too. Like I always remember like Matt Fernattle, the 3 technique playing next to me, getting just washed down the line of scrimmage by Orlando Pace over and over and over again. And they were really, really good. You go back, you just get back to work, right? And I think we talked about a little bit either on the podcast or the last show, like as a player, you have a very quick memory, right? It has to end, besides the CTE, right? And the nonsense that everyone in Happy Valley forgot that we lost to Ohio State that Mike tried to peddle a few minutes ago. you do, because you go back to work and you get to the next opponent. So you really just go back to work, right? You go back to practice, you start to get better, you get it over with, and you just go play. And I think that's what was disappointing about the Indiana game. It was a win. I agree with James. You got to celebrate wins. They're not easy to do. It wasn't pretty. At the end of the day, the W is the W. They got back to work, but that's really what it is. It can sometimes bring you together. Again, it'll take you off of your track to accomplish certain goals, like go undefeated or win a Big Ten title or go play for a national championship. But if you've got a quality locker room, if you've got a good staff, if you've got leadership, it can also kind of galvanize you and motivate you to go win games that maybe you're not supposed to win. And look, we ended up losing to Iowa. That's the game to me that's the most disappointing over the course of probably my entire tenure at Penn State, because if we don't lose that game, it's maybe a different conversation at the end of the year, and we have an opportunity to sneak into an opportunity to play for a title. But we laid an egg against Iowa, and Tim Dwight beat us all over the field. But it can bring you together. I mean, it should bring you together. If it's a good football team, if it's a good football program, a great locker room, a loss like that will motivate you to get through the rest of the season, and it'll bring you a little bit closer.
And like I just talked about, the pressure is off.
Yeah, definitely.
All of this hype about this is the year, this is the best roster, this is the last year, the 4-team playoff. That all went out the window after that Ohio State game, because even though the scoreboard didn't look like it did back when you guys went to the Horseshoe in 96, Noble, like the way it felt to all of the college football world, because we caught a beating from the national press after that game. James Franklin got absolutely savaged by national critics after that game. It felt like the season was pretty much over. You go back and you watch that show right here on the great For the Bloggy YouTube channel. You can see everybody, myself in particular, pretty despondent. So that's freeing in a way, I suppose.
Yes.
So speaking of For the Bloggy YouTube channel, we're going to share a little something special from Coach Caduti's film study segment here in just a moment. But before we get to it, I just want to say, talking about things lining up, Kev, with the Western Division scheduling. As a big fan of college football in general, an appreciator of the history of the sport, I really like the symmetry that we could have Michigan, which is currently sitting at 998 program wins, going for win number 1,000 against their arch rival, Ohio State. All we need for that to happen is for them to lose this weekend in Happy Valley, beat Maryland, and then get their 1,000th win against against Ohio State, and send the Nittany Lions to the Big Ten championship game. So Michigan, you guys are taking an absolute beating everywhere right now. I just want you to know that we here on Obligatory, we believe in you, and we are rooting for that historic moment, win number 1,000 against the Buckeyes. Now, coming up next, we got the For the Caduti, Call of Caduti. Well, I screwed that whole thing up. Just go to the segment.
For the Caduti.
Yeah. It's Call of Caduti.
Call of Caduti.
We need note cards.
Drew had a phenomenal game on the road, but don't overlook how the game plan set him up for success. You're in what we like to call a tight end wing set with twins to the field. Now, let's talk about the play call here. I thought was really interesting. Number one, it's a very simple, easy read for the quarterback. But what I thought was even more impressive was not only was it an easy read, you've got a nice pocket developed because of the run fake. Okay, now again, this doesn't look like much of a run fake, but it really considered one if you haven't noticed. So watch the linebacker step down. He sits and he waits. This right here is a huge deal because it opens up this right here. So all they're doing is they're running what's called a levels concept, okay? And so levels is very simple. One guy takes an intermediate shallow, one guy goes a little deeper, and all they're doing is they're going to read whatever happens in this area here. So if you watch, okay, the outside guy, he takes the inside, okay? The slot receiver presses out, and he runs the dig over the top. And all the quarterback's doing is he's reading what's happening here. If this guy drives down, he's going to find the open replacement area. If this guy stays back and plays over the top, then you've got the open empty area here. Quarterback sits in the pocket, throws a great ball, and there you go. You've got a huge gain. simple read, one-man read. We're not having to go through progressions. We're getting comfortable in the pocket.
It's the obligatory PSU pregame show, getting you, Nittany Nation, ready for Michigan Week. Thanks again to our presenting sponsor, Anti-Fragile Brewing Company. If you are in town for the Michigan game or for Rutgers next week, check them out at 324 East Calder Way. It is a fully functioning bar and brewery right in the heart of downtown State College. A great place with some of the best beer. Thanks so much, and visit them at antifragilebrew.com. All right, boys, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the Michigan sign-stealing scandal, saga, the Ballad of Connor Stallions, whatever you want to call it. I'm almost afraid to talk specifics because we're recording this to be posted in the middle of the week, and this story changes every 12 to 24 hours. Just in general, I want to get a heat check from all of you. Mike the Mailman, I'm going to start with you and then go over to Horne. What do you got?
I'm amazed.
It's a big deal?
It is a big deal. I'm just amazed how long it's taken them to get everything put together here. I don't know what's taken so long to do what they have to do.
Well, this is big time stuff.
I know.
Mike, I can't think of any other situation, guys, where mid-season a title contending team has had anything like this come out. Usually it's like 3 years later, we found out Reggie Bush's parents got a free house. Not like in week 9.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So to the point, I think people who are looking for a quick resolution, you got to understand there's like millions and millions of dollars wrapped up in whatever is going to happen over the next few weeks with this thing.
Yeah, well, Mike the Mailman has been a crook for 70 years. They still haven't caught up to him. So that's funny coming from that side of the table.
That's right.
But
keep it under the table here, will you?
No, I don't really know what to think. It seems like the buzzers are sort of circling here a little bit more than they were when we talked about this last time. The fact when that picture of someone who looks like Connor Stallions on the side of the Western Michigan sideline first came to light, I'm like, there's just no way. That's just some message board guy. Yeah. There's absolutely no way. And then when the coaching,
how is this even real? How is that even
the coaching
real?
Staff couldn't say who it was, I'm like, no kidding. And so it's clearly I think it's one rogue lunatic and people under him, and then obviously the coordinators are implicated. And I think here's what's most likely true. The offensive defensive coordinator knew the whole thing. They at least knew that there's some weirdo that wrote a manifesto standing behind them, whispering the plays into their ear most of the game. Maybe they didn't ask how or why.
He just magically seems to know what's going to happen. Right. And the less I ask, the better.
And
ignorance is bliss.
Harbaugh probably had some idea, but they probably shielded him in a way that's like he knew that they were getting the calls, but not how or why or from who. And it was just sort of blissful ignorance. Nonetheless, that's still, if you're aware that your team is cheating to get the calls of the other team, that's still a major, major deal. Yeah. What the Big Ten or NCAA will do is certainly clouded by the fact that Michigan has a driver's seat to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So there's so many competing interests. I'm also no fan of these Big Ten or NCAA enforcement, without any sort of due process, given the trauma that we went through 12 years ago.
Yeah.
You see, it's kind of funny watching Michigan that they're ready to sue the Big Ten or NCAA for an injunction the moment they come down to punish them. Like the president, all the football reporters are reporting that President Ono will sue the Big Ten the moment that they try to punish them, which is very different.
Wild.
Very different than what happens in State College.
Oh yeah,
wild.
Yeah.
Brandon, can you imagine these MFers who didn't even want us to be part of this conference? There are two teams that have absolutely run the Big Ten for a century. Mm-hmm. And we are somehow in a situation where one of those two teams that can pretty much have whatever they want whenever they want it are now in a position of they're threatening to sue the conference. If anything signals the sea change that is coming to college football, it's that Michigan, of all places, finds themselves in a position where they are ready to go to court against the Big Ten Conference. It's hard to believe. So, Brandon, I've got 3 questions for you. The first of which is if you can just kind of give a little perspective on what sort and the extent of the advantage that you think what we're all pretty confident Michigan was doing. Now, I think, Kev, your view of it is probably correct. I think it was more like, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, don't ask, don't tell, that it was all like systematically planned in some room with Jim Harbaugh and his buddies smoking big stogies. But talk about the advantage it gives do you think this is a quote unquote like big deal? And then give me, like if you put yourself in the shoes of being a player right now, how would you want to see Michigan punished either now or later? So there you go. 3 questions.
Yeah, it is a huge advantage. If you know what the offense is, I mean, that's why you study film. That's why you study tendencies, right? So that I can say, look, these guys, and that's why you self-scout as a coach, right? I look at myself and I go, what do I do on first down? What do I do on second down? So that an offense or a defense can't get a bead on me, right? If you actually know what the play is because of the signals on the sideline, that is such a tremendous advantage, especially with the way that football is played now, which is all happening at the line of scrimmage, right? Everything is that you have time as a defensive coordinator to look at the signals that the offense is putting in there and then make a call and get your defense set up the way that you want it to, and vice versa. Right? If I know on third down, the defense is signaling that they're playing lock coverage, so they're playing man-to-man, now I can call in rub routes, right? Or I can, with certainty, right? I can call this play that I know works against that front, or I know works against that coverage. So it gives you a tremendous competitive advantage if you know the play that's happening. I mean, one of the things that happens in practice all the time at every level of football, right, is the offense always blames the defense for scheming practice, right? Looking at the script and setting the plays up accordingly to be successful, right? If you give me an offensive script before practice and it says, hey, I know all the plays, I guarantee you, barring some mistake that a kid makes, I can call a defense that sets up and stops almost every play that our offense has if I know the play ahead of time. But if I don't know the play ahead of time, now I'm kind of guessing and I'm playing tendencies. So from that perspective, you have to kind of say it gives you a huge advantage. And as a player, I mean, look, if that's what they're doing and they're the number 1 team in the Big Ten and they're in a position to go to the playoffs, yeah, man, I want them to get punished. I want them to get called on it. I would feel a little bit cheated and robbed if I've played them and they've used that against me and my team. So I do think it's a big deal. And I think that as much as hard as it's been to kind of follow the story and what's actually happened and what's not actually happened, when you start to see the footage and you start to see how well Michigan has played defensively, especially since these kind of allegations might have started, it kind of all correlates, right? It all works. So I think they need to get slapped big time. And I think it would be amazing if they sued the Big Ten, like you said, Chris. I think that'll be a hell of a story. You know what I mean? A hell of a story.
That's a terrific point about the defense having the offensive script in practice. Oh, I never really thought about it. I mean, that's true. That does happen all the time. And that actually is a pretty good corollary for what's going on here. So, all right, guys, I'm just going to lay this out for you. This is probably going to be unpopular. Here's my feeling about what the punishment should be. I know there's been talk about Jim Harbaugh getting suspended. By the time you're watching this, it may have already happened. Who knows? We're flying blind just like everybody else. To me, like, first of all, if you want to justify it that way, that's fine. He's the head of the program, and they have that institutional control written into NCAA rules where you don't have to know necessarily that it's going on. You have to be able to keep control of your program so that you don't have one guy orchestrating a massive Spygate scandal for 2 years right under your nose. You want to blame Harbaugh for it, great. I think when I think about the perceived integrity of the sport, frankly, the benefit to the Big Ten. I mean, if Penn State's not going to beat Michigan on Saturday, I'd at least like to get the, whatever, $2 million or whatever we get trickling down from their playoff appearance. I don't think I want to see Michigan hastily punished in a half-ass way as much this season as I think about they gained a protracted competitive advantage over multiple years because of this. I think down the line, they need to be given a competitive disadvantage. I would much rather see a penalty that hits them with a fine and restricts them, like, let's say 5-8 scholarships over a few years, where you say, okay, you guys worked to get a defined competitive advantage over the competition. Starting next season, this team, you guys do whatever you can do, and then starting next season, you get slapped down with a defined competitive disadvantage.
5 or 8. I mean, we got docked like 30 scholarships and nothing even happened. So I'm rooting for more.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe 10 or whatever. I did think about that actually, and part of the thing was that after Corman took the NCAA to court, like they're never going to be able to create a penalty like that ever again.
Here's what'll happen: we'll win, and then between this week and next week, the Big Ten will decide to vacate all of their wins, giving Ohio State the driver's seat, playoffs, depriving Penn State of its one last chance. That'll be what happens.
That sounds familiar.
Okay, last question for the panel before we go to Mike the Mailman's Trends to Treasure. All of this chaos, is it an advantage or a disadvantage for Michigan? Are they distracted or are they focused and circling the wagons? Brandon Noble, go.
I think that from a player's perspective, you circle the wagons, but I do think from a coach's perspective, right, it kind of changes things the way that what they have to deal with in their kind of meetings and goings on, right, in their organization and preparation for practice, right. And obviously, look, I mean, not for nothing, but all of a sudden, if you've been using this tool and you don't have this tool anymore, right, what does that mean for us as a staff? But I do think though that from a player's perspective, right, you're going to use this in a way that circles the wagons and kind of keeps you in a position to play better.
Far be it from me to suggest that anything that involves coaching being more of a net neutral for Penn State is a major advantage for Penn State. But if you have to say thumbs up or thumbs down, advantage or disadvantage Michigan, what do you got?
I go, it's an advantage for us, right? Disadvantage Michigan, 100%. Yeah.
Mike, I can guess what you're going to say, but go ahead.
I think the players I think players want to prove that they can win without all these signs. I mean, I think Michigan players will be much more focused.
So you think it's an advantage for Michigan?
I do. Yes, I do.
That is a shocker. This is what we're going for, folks. We're going for a weekend of upset shocker moments. Okay, good job, Mike. Advantage.
I don't know. Whatever it is mentally, it's certainly not better or worse than them having our signs. So I'm glad they don't have our signs.
Yeah, well,
that's true. That's true.
Whatever from there.
Yeah, well, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Just the disadvantage of not knowing what we're going to do. I'm going to call it a slight advantage for Michigan from a psychological standpoint. I do think by nature, the Michigan man is an arrogant creature. So anything that allows him to be even further up his own butt is probably playing into what he does best. So Mike the Mailman, we're going to have your Trends to Treasure. And on the other side, our random number generator score predictions.
Hi, everybody. Mike the Mailman with this week's edition of Trends to Treasure. Last time we were 2-1. Let's hope that trend continues. First up this week, we have North Carolina State at Wake Forest. Wake Forest is 12-1 against the spread in the last 13 games against North Carolina State at home. So the play here is Wake Forest. Actually, Wake Forest is a little dog, so I really like this play also. Next up, we have Baylor at Kansas State. Kansas State is 5-0 in the last 5 games at home. It's a big number, but Kansas State probably minus the 20.5 would be the play here. And the last selection we have today is Stanford at Oregon State. Oregon State is 11-1 against the spread in the last 12 games at home. So the play here is the Oregon State Beavers. So good luck with everybody, and don't forget, bet with your head and not with your heart. Go get them.
It's the obligatory PSU pregame show from right here in the heart of Happy Valley, brought to you by Anti-Fragile Brewing Company at 324 East Calder Way. Check them out at antifragilebrew.com, making delicious beers that we are enjoying right here on this program. I'm your fake host, Chris Buchignani, with Mike the Mailman, Kevin Horne, and Brandon Noble coming to us remotely. So it's that time of the show where we do our random number generator. Randomly generate score numbers, and we'll give our prediction for Penn State and Michigan. Brandon, give me your score prediction and one key to the game for the Nittany Lions.
Okay, so random number generator. I think it is a very close football game, but I do think that Michigan ends up winning, unfortunately. I think it's somewhere 24 to 21-ish, but I do think it could go either way, and I think the key to that is turnovers. I think Penn State's defense has to turn the Michigan offense over a couple of times. And if they do that, and our offense can take advantage of that, I think we have a shot to win the football game. But really, at the end of the day, it's going to be, can we get Drew Aller and the boys a couple extra series and keep that Michigan off the field a couple times early to let us stay in the football game?
Whew. Okay. I mean, I like that point, but rough. We're starting off on the wrong foot. I do think I got to save you for last.
Okay, whatever.
Okay, buddy. Okay,
I'll be here.
All right.
I'll be here.
The legendary campus icon. All right, we need you. We need you on this one. Do you want to go or do you want me to go?
You're the host. You tell me.
All right. So I said after the Ohio State game, I looked directly into this very camera.
I remember
said,
that.
To you, our viewing audience, that you have my word that I was not going to peddle any more snake oil about this program and this head coach in a big game until I saw it on the field. And so as much as like my bleeding blue and white heart wants me to pick the upset, I'm not gonna do it. I mean, I've seen this movie way too many times. I've got the Michigan Wolverines coming into Happy Valley and coming out with a 31-15 victory. My key to the game, guys, is the third quarter. Neither team has allowed an opponent to score a single point in the third quarter. If you think back to last season's game, improbably, despite playing like garbage through the entire first half of the game, Penn State had the lead just because of the way things went. And it was largely on the defense keeping them in it and the offense not doing their part. I think that the way Penn State starts the second half of the game, whether or not they can show that they are prepared to play 4 quarters, not 2 or 3, they set the tone in the third quarter of the game. That's going to be incredibly important. If the Nittany Lions can be the first team to score on Michigan in the third quarter this season, I give them at least a puncher's chance going into the fourth quarter. And if you know how down I am on us in a big game, a puncher's chance is a big concession for me to make. Kevin Horne.
Yeah, no. So the number, Michael, started at 7,
That's
very
right.
quickly bought down to 5.
Yeah,
And
that's-
if you search long enough, when we're recording this, you can get 4.5.
Yeah.
Michigan minus 4.5 rather. So
Yeah.
the money, early money, the sucker money is on Penn State,
State,
and
yep.
they are suckers. I think it's going to be 27-10 Michigan. 10 will be fewer points than beers. I will have an anti-fragile this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in total. The total is 44, so I like the under a little bit. Two good, solid defenses. I don't know, key to the game. Drew Aller not being a pumpkin, I don't know. Like being marginally competent against a defense that's not atrocious. That would be nice. We'll see. Being able to run the ball after contact once, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
You're watching on the For the Bloggy YouTube channel. If you read my weekly pregame column on forthebloggy.com, which you should, you know I like to talk about the journey of the season and the narrative of the season. Mike The Mailman, beloved campus icon.
Too kind.
Here's the story I want to be telling about this Penn State football season. Huge preseason expectations coming off the Rose Bowl win, smashed to a million pieces in Columbus, Ohio. Everyone wrote us off nationally, locally. Everyone gave up on the season. One of the worst teams in college football, Indiana Hoosiers, comes to Beaver Stadium, almost beats us. And just like Saquon Barkley scoring against Minnesota in overtime in 2016, our 5-star top quarterback recruit, Drew Aller, throws his first interception of the season, of his career, after throwing the most passes of any college quarterback before throwing a pick at the worst possible time. The defense holds, and he uncorks the deep ball we've been waiting for all season and wins the game. And that unlocks something and begins his superstar career and leads into the storybook victory over the Wolverines at home. We need some positivity. You are our last hope. Mike the Mailman, give me your randomly generated numbers and a key to the game.
I really think Penn State is a double-digit victory on Saturday. Will be a double-digit. Did you see the creative?
You never randomly you never randomly generate the numbers.
No,
for me,
because
you jerk.
as a player,
I get it.
okay.
Okay. All right. Gambling stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, but they like you said, just said about how Penn State defense put it together last year a little bit, and I think the defense is a lot better this year. But I thought last week's game against Maryland, the creativity of the play calling was unbelievable, and that's something we have not seen either. And the game plan was good. I just think they're going to come back with another unbelievable game plan and some good creative plays.
Unshakable faith.
We're there.
That is the message for this weekend for Penn State fans. So thank you so much always for joining us here on the Obligatory PSU Pregame Show. We may not give you the most incisive analysis, but we hope we give you the vibes, which is what we need this weekend to knock off the Wolverines and set up that historic moment of Michigan getting their 1,000th program win against the arch rival Buckeyes. I want that great moment, guys, for the sport of college football. Absolutely. I want it. Michigan, we are pulling for you to get that historic 1,000th win against Ohio State. And a reminder, whether this weekend you need to celebrate or commiserate, a great way to do it is with the fine beer brewed by the folks at the Anti-Fragile Brewing Company at 324 East Calder Way and antifragilebrew.com. Thanks so much for joining us on the For the Bloggy YouTube channel. We'll be back again before the end of the regular season. We appreciate those guys having us. As always, take care of yourselves and each other. For the love of God, beat Michigan.